All right, and welcome to the second episode of the Where Were We Again podcast. In case you haven't guessed by the name, it's a fun podcast where we just sit here and have a conversation. We have conversations with all kinds of great people, whether they're artists themselves or people involved in music and somehow, whether they're promoters or agents or whatever. We want to have a good conversation and kind of hang out and learn some cool things and get to know the people that we listen to on a regular basis. So today on episode 2, I have Becca from Reclaim the Day. Hey, thanks for coming to hang out with me.
Yeah, no problem. It's a pleasure.
Right. So we got to meet a little bit. We've met like 2 or 3 times now through Kingdom Come Festival. So yeah, if you listen to the last podcast, yes, this has become a reoccurring theme. D-Swat and I most recently got to see at Kingdom Come as well. I've known him for years, but Becca, we're just getting to know each other. So, hey, thanks for coming and hanging out and just having a conversation and getting to know each other a little bit. So, let's start from the beginning, right? So how did you get started in music, right? That's always a loaded question, but let's start just at the very beginning.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I actually was talking to somebody, I think a new student of mine recently about this. If you look at it, when I started music, it was probably over 15 years ago. But I started playing guitar around then. But when I started to do it like professionally in the industry, it was probably like 11 or 12 years. I started around 2011, 2012 with my first band, kind of going out and touring and everything like that. But I started music because I used to be a big athlete more than anything. Not to say that I was really that good at that athletics, but it was like my life. My first dream, I always kind of laugh at it because it's like, I'm going to be the first woman in the NFL or whatever. Some stupid stuff, but not to downplay anybody else that wants to dream like that. But I know from my skill and expertise, probably wasn't going to get there anyway. But I watched a Heart concert on TV one day, and I saw Nancy Wilson and Ann Wilson, and I was like, I want to play guitar like Nancy. And so I just picked it up. I told my dad, I was like, I want to learn this. And after that, it was just kind of like one after the other. I got hooked up with my first band, and then technically my first band was like a traveling like youth band, but then after that, like I went and I played guitar. I started out as a guitar for my first actual band, but then moved to lead vocalist, and from there just kind of like periodically went through like 5 or 6, I kind of lost track, like 6 other bands throughout the last 10, 11 years. And it's been crazy whether most of them I played backing like rhythm guitar and backing vocals and stuff. And then 2019, I left my last project and started Reclaim the Day with my husband. And honestly, like, I call this like my forever band because it is just the band that God really laid on my heart to do. It's our ministry with my husband. And, granted, I still have my solo project that's in the works, but, everybody is family in this. And it's probably one of the most, it's depending on how we define success, but one of the successful projects we've done because, we've kept God at the helm. So, it's like the shortest version I've ever given of that, honestly.
Well, the good news is it's a podcast, so time is, ours. That's fantastic. I mean, and it's kind of funny too, because there's the same kind of thing that kind of got started with when I had the conversation with Dee. I was like, how did you get started, right? And we started talking about his EDM stuff. I'm like, because for him it was interesting because I asked him like, how did you get into EDM? Because I knew he actually started in alternative rock. So I'm like, how did you make that jump? And so he went down this long winding road and talked about it. And now he's one of those guys that he just was like one of those musical prodigy children. He was playing classical piano at 6. But I'm like, how did you get into doing rock though? And he was like, I started playing all the classic rocks. And, there's this rock station in St. Louis, for those that don't know, called KSG, and they play nonstop classic rock. And they still do. I mean, they started playing classic rock when it wasn't classic. and just never stopped playing that music, and they never kind of stopped doing it. And he's like, well, that's what I started learning from. I started playing bands like The Heart and things like that. And, you know, so it's kind of funny. Like, it just seems like that's how everybody starts. Just like, oh, I heard classic rock on the radio or whatever. And that's where I started, you know?
Yeah. And it's funny too, because I personally didn't actually, like, obviously if you've listened to Reclaim the Day at all, it's more metal than it is.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm a scream vocalist and things like that, which is not always everybody's cup of tea, but I actually was very, like, strongly against that music in my earlier years.
Whoa, really?
Okay. Yeah, I was, you know, like, I was kind of weird. Just, it wasn't really anybody that drilled that into me. It was just like, oh, you know, like, you turn on Evanescence, I'm like, turn off that music. It makes people, like, it's so sad. It makes people, like, depressed and suicidal and things like that. You know, just kind of seeing what it did to some of my family, because you're just like, okay, they're, like, depressed, and they would just constantly listen to this music while they were, like, you know, do self-harm and things like that. And you're like, turn off this music. Like, this is bad. This is bad music. And then, you know, one day I went to a Christian music store, and out of nowhere, my parents are like, okay, pick 2 CDs you want to take while you pull weeds around the house that day. So I got my CD player, because I'm an old person, right? You know, I sound old, but, like, you know, I still was alive when tapes were there, a thing too.
Yeah,
but,
no, for real. Like, that's what, honestly, I was the one guy I was the kid that was still recording stuff off of the radio onto my cassette tape, because that's what you did. If you wanted to hear that song, that's how you did it. But yeah, no, I get it. CDs, man, that's what I grew up with, right? That's, if you want to listen to something, that's what it was.
Yeah, I'm so old school about it. I still like CDs, to be honest.
Was there, you're talking about going to the Christian music store to pick up CDs and kind of check stuff out, like, was there something you just, like, would you walk into the store, or was there something you're just, like, fly into? Like, this is what I have to pick up. Like, this is what I love this.
I didn't really know many bands. So the bands that I was listening to, especially back in the day, was the old Hawk Nelson. And, like, that was about as rock as it was going to get for me. And, you know, KJ52, a lot of these older kind of, they didn't, it wasn't like heavy metal, it wasn't scream, it wasn't things like that, anything like that. And then I just randomly picked out 2 albums. I don't know what, to this day, I don't remember why, but I just remember getting these 2 albums, and it was Skillet Collide, and it was Jesus Freak, DC Talk. And the moment I put in that album, Collide, I was like, oh no, what did I just get into? And I'm like, oh my goodness. And of course, it's to this day, at least, you know, I'll make a confession. I haven't really listened to Skillet's new album, but, you know, to this day, I'm like, this is, my opinion, one of the heaviest Skillet albums ever. And I'm just like, I'm listening to it and I'm thinking, wow, you know what, this is actually pretty good. Like, this would be really cool. And I fell in love with Skillet from there on out. And they were the ones that really got me into metal. And then I became, like, a huge Evanescence fan, because that was like the band that, even though that was the band that I was always telling my sister, I'm like, hey, you turn off that devil music, you know. It actually became, like, one of my favorite, if not my favorite bands, that was most influential, because Skillet mixed with Evanescence. And you might hear that in a lot of my solo stuff that's going to be coming, because I like to add that orchestral stuff.
Ooh,
with
I like that.
Basic rock. And things like that. So that's a lot of similarity to my writing style, with Skillet mixed with Evanescence. Is kind of like what I started out into the metal world with. So it's really weird. But if you listen to Reclaim the Day, you will definitely not hear that. So.
No, I love Reclaim. Wow. See, this is what happens when you try to do a podcast after a long day of work. Words don't work anymore. No, Reclaim the Day is fantastic, right? I've seen you guys play several times now, and it's just amazing, you know? And it's funny because, like, you know, you talk about, like, this heavy stuff, right? You're talking about, like, for example, like, for, you know, you're saying, oh yeah, I put in that Skillet album. I was like, what happened there? Skillet was probably my first break into really heavy music. No, people, yes, that laugh at that. I know if you're listening, you're laughing at me for saying really heavy music because, yeah, Skillet's not really heavy music. But if you're like, a young kid, young teen, and you're putting in Clyde for the first time, you're like, same thing you had. It's like, what the heck is this? I'm not comfortable with what I'm hearing, but it was different. It just spoke to you. So I agree with you on this. This is the hot take for some people, but no, Collide was probably the heaviest Skillet album. I would say it's a tough call between saying it's their best album or not. I think Comatose could come in as their best album, but again, hot takes there for Skillet, right? Yeah, I mean, funny thing for me was my first introduction to Skillet and heavy music was when they covered a VeggieTales song.
Oh my goodness. I think I remember that too.
Uh-huh. So they covered Stand Up, the Chocolate Factory song at the end.
Yeah.
But I love VeggieTales, and so that's what I grew up on. And so I threw in this VeggieTales cover album, and I went in and I go, okay, there's some great bands. You get the very last song, and it's Skillet. And honestly, outside of Comatose, that was probably the most screaming he had done in a song at that point, which blew my mind, which I laugh at that. I'm like, of all the songs to do that to, it would be the VeggieTales one that's going to Soccer Mom vans. But I think it worked great. No, for real, Skillet was probably my break into hard music because I was like you, right? My music selection was never that hard. DC Talk was another one of the big breakthroughs. So I thought that was great that you had mentioned that. But so you get into hard music, right? You start to get into it. You're starting to love it, and you move into playing it. Like, what pushed you? How did you figure out screaming? Because I think that's probably another big you're hearing. But like, that's a hard thing to do if you don't know how to do it. And by the way, if you don't know how to do it, you could hurt yourself. So be careful with trying that out. Like, there's a right way to do it. But how did you figure out how to do that?
That's a funny story. So my first band, when I always make the joke that my first band, basically we had as many members as Angelina Jolie had kids. Because it was just like,
it's a lot, by the way.
Yeah, it is a lot, because we just had so many member and lineup changes in that band, but at the very beginning, the ones that we had pretty much playing bass for us, every bass player just they never stuck around. And they were the ones that were screaming. And eventually I was like, you know what? I got to take the mantle. I got to figure out how to scream so that we can stop running into this problem. So I did. This was probably back 2012 when I started screaming. And honestly, I think, actually, I know that I started doing it, not healthy at all. In fact, I started doing what was called inhales. And inhales are like when you're actually inhaling and then like it's just like you're literally drawing that noise as you're inhaling and it's just all coming from the throat. So it's really, honestly, it's not really good for you. And so I did that for years knowing that it was wrong. And there would be shows that I would like, with that band specifically, I would do a scream and I knew I was doing it wrong. I felt a cough coming on. I would turn away from the audience and then just cough and then turn right back around. Like, eventually though, it just kind of got to the point where I needed to learn exhales, for one of my bands. Cause I was still playing at this point. I was doing rhythm guitar. But I really wanted to challenge myself to be better and, project more and, have more control over my screams. So in that band, I specifically learned to do my screams better, and challenge myself. So I listened to a lot of, granted it's not a Christian band, but I listened to a lot of Conquer Divide, to really shape my screams. It's an all-female metalcore band, but I would listen to their sounds and their tones and really try to shape my own to it, as I would learn breath control and projecting wise with my exhales. And then, taking vocal lessons with Zana a few years later, with just my cleans. I just went to her for my cleans because my cleans at that point I had no confidence in whatsoever. Just knowing what I know really ultimately helps with screaming too, with have that. So it just kind of evolved over time. But I specifically remember early on doing a show probably back in 2015 with The Letter Black, the first time I ever did a show with them. And I told Sarah, and I remember she's like, yeah, that's so bad for you. I told her, like, doing inhales and whatnot. Yeah, I remember that. It's just kind of crazy. I'm definitely a lot better of a screamer than it was like 10 years ago.
Trust me, I get that. I've tried it, and I sound like a dying frog. And no, I'm not going to attempt it here. But no, that's fantastic. And so there's a little thing I'm going to call back to and just stop and say, hey, by the way, guys, if you guys are listening to this and you want to learn how to scream, Zana, for instance, is actually a fantastic teacher. I don't know if you do lessons in that.
I do.
But see, there you go. And yeah, so if they're probably two of my favorite female screamers right now is going to be Zana and Becca, right? So you guys are fantastic at it. And if you're going to learn from somebody, these two are the great people to learn from. But by the way, they also do lessons in other things too. So go check it out. If you want to learn some stuff, that's what I love about, like, here I'm going to do this. The quote unquote Christian music world is like, if they're all the great musicians and artists out there, almost all of them give lessons. So if you really like what you hear, chances are you can learn how to do it from them, and you support them too. So that's kind of a good thing to do, by the way. But
yeah, it's really cool because she teaches vocal lessons and she does business consultations and things. I teach vocal lessons. I do business consultations and booking consultations. Like, I have somebody that I'm doing, like, because I used to be a booking agent as well.
Oh, wow.
I still do a little bit of it when I have the time. That's part of what we have as our Reclaim the Day Studios, what I used to do for artists around. Then I also teach guitar, bass, piano, and I'm kind of working on drums. But what I always tell people is, like, if you want to learn scream vocals, you got to learn to sing first, because you can't do one without the other. You got to learn to crawl before you can walk, because they're so intertwined. So it's one of those things where if you want to learn how to scream, learn how to sing first, and at least get the breathing down. That's going to help you be a better scream vocalist.
That's probably important. Yeah. Don't need anybody turning purple just trying to make a good scream. But anyways, so that brings up some interesting topics, right? So part of the thing that I want to do with this podcast too is I don't want to just have interviews with just the artist, because the artists are fantastic, but I also want to bring light to some of the stuff that goes on that makes what you guys do possible, right? So I'm going to have conversations with promoters, booking agents. Coming up, I've got an interview coming up with the mothership, Cindy Blankenship herself. You want to talk about an interesting story? That's going to be a great one. If you guys be sure to listen to that episode, just because how she got to where she is and how she got to do what she does is amazing. And it's something that really anybody can pull off. And it doesn't, it's nothing special. It's who you are that makes you special, and so she's a very special person. I want to tell her story, and I want to tell her story for a couple different reasons, because I want to show, hey, what you do, even the smallest thing, makes a huge impact, not just on herself, but it made it a huge impact on those around. And I think it's an interesting story to tell because of the impact, just helping out in even the smallest way, just sharing a post, liking something, coming and showing up at a show and maybe bringing something for whoever's playing, how much of an impact that can really have. And so I want to have those conversations, bring those things to light. And, so I want to start talking about some of those things too. So let's talk in a little bit about that, right? So you mentioned, well, you've done booking, right? What is, like, what is your experiences booking, right? How did you get into doing booking? Because that can be a challenging thing to get into in and of itself, right? Whether it's booking a show for yourself, right? Promoting your own show, or booking an artist to other venues. Like, how did you get into doing that, right? Was that just because of a need to do it for your own self, or like, is that something you picked up because like you tired of working with poor booking agents? Because honestly, they're there too. That's a problem. But
yeah. I mean, it's kind of a mix of things. So I kind of made it out to where I learned a lot of aspects of the business myself, so I can handle a lot of it, because I do all the business for RTD and things like that. So, granted, my help comes from my husband, who's basically my partner, but he's still a lot to learn for that. I've worn almost every hat that I can in the business, besides radio stuff. I've never really owned a record label. I've been signed to a record label, but with an old project, if you want to call it that. It was a very smaller one. But one of my old projects, just kind of seen every aspect. I've put on shows before, so I've been a promoter, because I wanted to learn each side of the industry, so that I could be there to help others. But ultimately to, benefit and push whatever project I was, in as well. So I started booking because, for one, I couldn't really afford, it's just like an instrument. You can't afford lessons, you can't afford this and that, so you learn it yourself. We couldn't afford a booking agent. And so I took matters on my own hands and just really went out and learned the business and learned that aspect for my band. And then eventually I joined another band later on that I kind of was like just the booking person. And after I had left that band, because I was sending probably about good 250 emails a day. Wow. If I could, if I had the chance to. I'm not saying that that's like the best way, but that was just my challenge to myself that throughout the days, and it was kind of also a requirement. But that's a different story. But yeah, after I left that band, it was one of those things where I tried to work for an actual company and as a booking agent. With my experience, I didn't really like working for them, if I'm honest, because I didn't like the percentages and things like that. But honestly, that was weird, because with that agency that I worked for, I searched for artists. I would message them and I would reach out to them. And actually, that's how I got hooked up with 3 Days Under. The first time I met and talked to them. Eventually we built a friendship and whatnot. I never really booked for them. But I think I made, I did maybe 1 month, but I didn't really get much for them. Booking's not an easy job.
Oh gosh, no.
It is one of those things where, especially nowadays, just touring in general for an artist. The thing I love about it, though, is looking at it from not just a booking agent perspective, which there are a lot of agents out there that don't understand it from an artist perspective. And there are a lot of artists that don't understand it from an agent perspective. And I'm blessed to see both sides. Yeah. Just after I left that, I just started booking independently with Reclaim the Day Studios. And I just kind of try to help out where I can. I haven't really done it much for any other artists lately, just been working on it with RTD and my solo project. But I've been doing a little booking for Zana, I will say that. So just helping a friend out where I can. And kind of doing consultations with another friend who's doing booking as well, and kind of shooting her in the right direction. So, like I said, it's not an easy job, because you get rejected more than you do anything. And especially you come to find out, even with a lot of Christian venues, more so than not, there are a lot more rejection in that side of things than there are on the secular side. So it can be discouraging and frustrating, but every aspect of what I've learned throughout the last 15 years of just being a part of music, I'm blessed to know what I know.
Yeah, honestly, to understand both sides, I think really makes all the difference, because it puts things in a different perspective and helps you make the right decisions for both parties, plus it helps right now that you're working with yourself. But so that kind of brings me kind of some of the other things I was kind of interested in a little bit, because this will be a recurring theme going forward anyways, but it's, because part of what I want to do with this podcast is I want to really work with people who are doing it for the right reasons, per se, right? They're still a ministry. Okay. And it's a lot of times I may work with artists that may not be necessarily floating out into the Christian music world, but they're still doing it as a ministry, right? And so that we may see some of that, but I know you guys Reclaim the Day tend to be more in that Christian market, but I know you're not afraid to necessarily go outside of that. But it's interesting to me, just because like everybody's got a different view on what that means, right?
Yeah.
Because some bands, that can be a bit of a dirty word, Christian music, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh gosh, it's so terrible, or the people are so bad, or it's just like, no, they don't care. They're not going to actually care about you or support you, or, I that's something I've been seeing quite a bit. I think people working in the Christian music industry as an artist, a lot of times I see them end up leaving music altogether. It's a hard industry. So like part of that, well, for the first part, let's establish the ministry side. So first and foremost, you guys do this as a ministry. You've mentioned that quite a bit. How did you determine that's what you want to do? I mean, that's a loaded question, because a lot of times that it's really a calling, but outside of that, like what got you pulled into this being a ministry, other than just being like, oh, I love being in a band, I want to go play music? How did you make that like, no, this is not just a band and I want to make music? How did that become like, I need to make this a ministry? And how do you stay focused in that discipline?
That's actually a really good question. And there's like 1,000 answers for that as well that I'll probably get into. But well, first and foremost, I am not one of those, we're not one of those Christian bands that believe, oh, you have to only play Christian, venues.
Good.
Yada, yada, and everything like that. In fact, we're actually trying to push more in the mainstream market for that reason. And it's not like we're just, oh, they're a Christian band leaving the Christian scene because they're going to go secular. That's not the case. The reason being is that we want to go out there and minister to those people out in the world. God says he calls us to go out in the world to, talk about him. But it's as long as we don't become part of the world. That's we have to be set aside from that. And that's the big, issue that comes into play, is that people are like, it's like there's so much division and so much arguments about everything that is Christianity in itself. So that's one thing I will throw out there first. And you know what? If anybody just says, oh, well, then they're not really Christian if they're going to go out and play a bar show. All right. You know what? Just because we go out and play a bar show doesn't mean we can't minister to those people. Those people probably need it more than, I'm not saying nobody really needs it more than anybody else, because there are a lot of people at a church that are hurting just as much. But there are people who won't step into a church, okay? There are people who, I've had friends that have like made jokes that they said, oh, yeah, if I ever step into the church, I'd probably like start, burning right then and there, like be set on fire.
Right.
But that's when you go out to these other places and you talk to these people. It doesn't mean you have to partake in what they're doing. It just means you go out there and minister to them. But the unfortunate thing is, why do people, quit the Christian industry? Why do people, take God's name out of it? Well, that's actually a whole nother side of things that people don't see. And that's because, for one, doing music in itself is hard. It is costly. You sacrifice not just money that you don't have, but you sacrifice time from your family. You sacrifice just being at home with friends and having a somewhat of a normal life, because you're doing something completely different that's not of the norm. It's not a 9 to 5 job. For at least most bands that are full time. I do full time music. I teach lessons full time and things like that. So I'm not sitting here working a 9 to 5 job like most people. But it does come with a price, and sometimes I have to go on the road 2 weeks at a time and be away from my son, and it sucks. Other times, it gets to the point where they're just the people involved, the judgment, and I'm not talking about like, oh, that person just had a drink. Look at them. That was so sinful. I'm talking about, this kind of goes to our song Say Goodbye. Say Goodbye was written about this situation my husband and I had with an old band of ours, where there was just a lot of mental abuse, and it was like a power trip. It was like, I'm better than you. I'm going to keep control over you. We had no control over our lives. It was just, there was just so much to it. But it's like, that's just so common I haven't seen it. I see it less in the secular industry. I don't doubt it that it happens, but I see it a lot in the Christian music industry. And then you find it, and all these people find and look up to certain people that they're not who you would perceive them to be. Yeah. And then they get constantly treated like dirt. And then people just leave the faith because they're like, if this is Christianity, I want no part of it. And you see that so often. So many bands have broken up because of that. They go to, the secular industry, and they're like, F Jesus, F that. And like, they're like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and denounce him, which is even worse. Which is,
That's what makes national news right now is so and so from this band is deconstructed and they are now atheists. Now you hear, like, it's literally, I've seen this so many times where you see the big national news stations picking up a story saying that this big known Christian band is now atheist. It's like, they weren't Christian to begin with. Yeah. Maybe they started that way, but something gone wrong. Something went horribly wrong.
There's so much to that, like there's that could go into like a whole deeper hole.
Oh yeah.
But, like it's sad to see, because these people, I probably almost quit music. I don't know how many times, because the way I've been treated by a lot of people. But ultimately, when I knew this was my calling, I knew this was my calling, and I had to keep pushing for it. And I think God could have given up on me numerous times. The times that I've all messed up every single band, and each time I restarted, I make the joke of times I'm like, I restarted probably like 5 times with different bands and different name and everything, and I'm like, I'm at this point that RTD is like, it's it, man. And this is where I'm staying, because as hard as it can get sometimes, I remember I didn't even really want to be the lead vocalist of RTD. Oh, wow. Starting out. I actually tried to get my husband to do it, because I had a lot of bad experiences with my first band being the lead vocalist. And so I just wanted to not do it. I was like, I'll play guitar, I'll play bass, whatever you need me to play, and just do backing screams or whatever. And my husband's like, no, I just want to play guitar. I was like, great. So we have 2 options here. I either step up as a vocalist, or we find somebody. And then I prayed about it, and I just remember clear as day, I heard God say, it's like, I didn't call you to sing for them, I called you to sing for me. And I was like, all right, God, but I'm taking lessons. So I did. And that's when brought me with Sana. But, I think a lot of my trauma, sadly, did happen in music. It really did.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people that have faced that same thing, and that's why people give up on this, and they're just like, I can't do this anymore. You know, especially what breaks my heart is the people that are just so on fire for God, so ready to go out there and, you know, play these shows, minister, and then they have this bad experience of being treated like they're nothing or they're less than nothing by the people that are bigger, which happens quite frequently, sad to say. And then they just lose all of their momentum. And which their momentum in reality, their hope should be in Jesus Christ and not in putting these other bigger bands on pedestals. And that's sometimes where people go wrong. But in reality, you know, some people look at it as like, why would I want to be a part of something that treats me like crap? You know, and it's just sad to see. You know, I've been a little bit more outspoken about it, you know, lately, because it's just,
Sure.
you know, I used to be one of those people like, oh, it'll settle itself. But now I'm like,
No.
the thing is, it happens to so many other people, and it just didn't just happen to me and my husband. It's a really, like, it's a common issue coming real all the time. We sit all the way.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that's kind of part of what I've been thinking. I've been thinking about that a lot because I hear the stories. You know, I've had these conversations, and it upsets me because it's just like, it's that wolves in sheep's clothing thing. So you're out here, you're saying, not only are you saying you're a Christian, but you're a Christian running a Christian label, trying to support Christian artists. But in reality, that's just what you're doing out front to get people to buy whatever you're selling. And reality is you're out here hurting all of these ministries, and just, you're not supporting, you're about making money. You know, and, or whatever else. I mean, who knows what, you know, there's just so many stories that, you know, I look at it's like, it almost is just like the traumatic of the church hurt that a lot of church leaders experience. The real people out there doing it for real ministry get burnt out and walk away and never come back.
Yep.
You know, and it's just heartbreaking, you know. And that's my thing is you know, I want to talk about those. I want to have those hard conversations. You know, one of the things is we'll never name names. Sorry, if you're trying to find a gossip show, this is not going to be it. We're not naming names here, but we're going to have the conversation because we need to bring light to the fact that there's some bad situations out there, but there are good situations too, you know, and
absolutely,
we're starting to see that because honestly, thanks to people like you who are having those conversations, we're bringing them to light. But we're bringing together the people that have been through those, and we're actually connecting the people who have been through that, and we're building something better. You know, I think this is the start of where you start to see real positive change and good things come of it. You know, and if you look at it from the Christian side, right, I think there are good organizations out there doing good things the right way and trying to honor those. Right. I see Kingdom Come as one of those, right? That's one of those. It's a small festival in the middle of nothing, cornfields, Indiana.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, they may not. And that's the hard stuff is like they may not pay the artist what the artist deserves, but it's not about that for either party anyways. It's a ministry, you know, and they raise money to put that on because they don't charge anybody to come show up. And the purpose of that is to bring people to listen to music that wouldn't normally come out and listen to music or do things like that and get exposed to something good. Come listen to heavy music in a cornfield, in a healing field, right? And get something positive out of that, you know, and get life change. You know, I've actually had experience with seeing people who wouldn't normally come to those type of events come to that event and specifically and come back, you know. There are several people that I've seen that have had that experience, and it makes a difference, you know. It's just amazing to see organizations like that exist. And so, you know, I love seeing that happen, and I love to bring light to that, because we're going to talk about those bad situations, whether it's, you know, our discussions here or other discussions down the road. They exist, they're difficult, but there's good things that come out of that, you know. There's another great podcast that I listen to a lot that really is just having these conversations about, oh, how did you get started, and what's like, you know, and they talk about all that. They talk about, oh yeah, well, I got hurt and I got burnt out, and they never get to the good part. You know, maybe you got hurt, but you don't talk about that. What, like, well, okay, what, you got hurt, but how did God use that hurt to do something better? You know, and some of them, we're just highlighting how people got hurt and got burned out, and the Christian music world sucks. And you know what? Screw it all, and I'm walking away. You know, we got hurt. It sucks. And maybe you're not doing music anymore, but you know what? God still used you anyways, right? Maybe it was your time to step away, and you got put into having an impact in your day-to-day life. Let's talk about the good things, you know, and I think you've gotten to see a lot of great things, and I'm excited to see where you guys go next, right? Yeah. Because it through the hard things come the great things, you know. Like you guys have had some really great traction with Chokehold, right? And it's not just because of a really great feature on the song, mind you, that there's a good feature on that song, but it's a fantastic song. And one of the things that I love about what Reclaim the Day is it's a Christian band, and we're using the label because it's, you know, that's what we're doing, but it's a Christian band that plays heavy music and actually does it well, and it's good, right? Because that is a thing, right? Unfortunately, there are people out there that are making music and it's not great, but you guys do it well. I love that.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank you.
And I think with Chokehold, it's doing well in all of those right places, and I'm excited to see where that takes you, right? Because I think that's just like that starting point, like I'm excited to see where that goes. And if you guys haven't heard the song Chokehold, go out on any streaming platform and go listen to it. Go buy it, right? Go to wherever you can buy music and buy that song, whether it's digitally or however, but go buy it once you've figured out you actually like it, because it's good. But, you know, also, or if you're really feeling up to it, go buy it and then go find some computer or something, set in your back room, and just put it on repeat on Spotify and leave it back there for about 3 weeks. That way Becca can go buy a hamburger at McDonald's tomorrow.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. It might have to be longer than 3 weeks just for Spotify to get those, but you know, I'm just kidding.
Well, I did say McDonald's, so but that's the problem with the music industry today. Anyways, is like, if you want to put out music, that's not how you're making the money. You're putting out music to kind of get started, so you can go out on tour to sell the T-shirts, where you might make your money back. But streaming, man. Yeah. You want to talk about an interesting like turn of events, right? Because we started by talking about, well, you know, you went to the Christian music store to buy a CD. That's when you had a chance of making money selling your music. Mm-hmm. Then we introduced streaming, and then suddenly you're never going to make any money selling music or putting out music again, because what is the Spotify payout rate? What is it, like 0.000319? Like, it's like, oh gosh, you have to listen to it like, what was it, like 1,000 times to get near like 50 cents or something crazy like that. It's just, it's outrageous, you know. Like, what is it like? Okay, let's get into some interesting topics around that. What does a band got to do to make money anymore? What is an effective way to make money as a touring artist?
As I always tell people, like, the way that we make money, obviously my husband has a normal job, but kind of goes back and forth. Right now, he's actually about to take off for the National Guard for like 7 months.
Oh, wow.
So he is, just to kind of put us in a better spot. We just gone through quite a few years of roughness, a lot of life, but to say the least. But he is taking a remote job with National Guard. So when he comes back, he's able to do remote work and focus on family and the band more as well. So, but on a side thing, a lot of the artists you see nowadays are either working like a side job. Like for me, I do lessons full time, or consultations. I do co-writes and things like that. Just basically everything music that I can. I even produce every now and then as well. And what I like to do is also go out and fill in for shows, because with Reclaim the Day, I really don't play instrumentally as much as I used to. So I kind of just focus more on my voice than anything. So I get my fill filling in for people, whether I be playing bass or guitar for other bands. So it's one of those things that I'm also a hired gun, so I'll go out and play for other artists. So it's kind of one of those things that complements, and then as far as that goes, like getting down to the nitty gritty financially, when we started our Patreon, that really super helps pay some back. So we have certain Patreon members, okay, they pay out a certain amount every month that they have subscribed to, and they get behind the scene content that we create as a band, and that really helps us loads with band stuff. It's just, and then when the streaming royalties come out, whenever they do every now and then, then that's just the cherry on top. But in reality, I worked a grind for a 9-to-5 shift for years until I got to this point where I was actually able to be established in doing what I do. And so it's really kind of dependent. Like, I know a couple of the guys in Disciple, they have their own studios, they teach lessons, they do all that stuff, co-writes. That's how they make their money when they're not touring. Because touring, honestly, sometimes cannot be worth it.
It's
all right,
a money pit.
it is, and you have to dump money and thousands of dollars in getting new merch. Okay, and it costs money for vehicle stuff and everything. Like, we had to sell our bus last year because it just didn't work. So when we go out, we had to up our guarantee just because we don't have a vehicle right now and we have to rent. And so we haven't really been touring much this year. Not that we plan to, anyways. But it's just it's a lot of money. Now, granted, I'm going on, and I haven't really announced this yet, but I'm going on a solo tour, an acoustic tour in October, November. Okay. But other than that, that's just like a one-person thing. It's acoustic guitar and a person. That's not carrying around an entire band full of merch and things like that. And that tour, anyways, is just going to be ministry focused for them. I mean, not like everything else I do isn't ministry focused, but I probably won't even be bringing a merch table in the fall for this tour, because I just really want to focus on the worship portion. But yeah, I always tell people, saving's your best friend. Find odd jobs. Like, some people are like, hey, I'm an artist, okay? If you do digital design, go for it. Use that as a means to provide for your band. That's the best way that you can go about doing this. And you'll see some growth. Go out there, make it known what you do, and then once you start to build your clientele list, you'll start to see, more and more of, just fruitfulness. It's just kind of amazing. I didn't expect to be where I was so soon, and God's really kind of provided for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because you get all the people that want to go into being a band and make money. I'm like, what band do you know that's making money? But I mean, for real, it really is it's ministry, and it's a creative outlet too, right? It's interesting because I think most music is really, you're writing your experiences. That's what at least most of what I hear nowadays is most artists, when they're writing lyrics and things, it's them writing their experiences, so it's a ministry and it's a creative outlet, and it's all kind of intertwined in just one big ball, because your emotional experiences that's in your lyrics are how you minister to people. And I love that because that means you're being honest, right? I love the honesty and the realness because that's really how you do ministry, is just being real with those and sharing your hurt. And you know that there are others out there and you get to take that and give that to somebody. But to go into music and to think that you can just make money at it. No.
Yeah. No, I knew that from day one, even when I started like over 10 years ago, that wasn't a thing. And, you know, to be honest with that, with being genuine, that's what ministry is all about. And some people think that going out and ministry is like, okay, it's like a pastoral position. You have to step up on stage and be one person on stage and one person off the stage. It's like, I hope to God nobody is putting me up on a pedestal, because they're going to see my faults and failures right there, right then and there. Because I try to be genuine. I spent there are projects I was definitely not perfect. I think every rock musician has been to a point where they would be like, I want to be a rock star at some point, and I've already been past that phase. But it's one of those things, like a lot of things where you want to be genuine with your fans and genuine with just people that you interact with. Because ultimately, I could sit there and say, oh, life sucks, because it does sometimes. But that's why RTD's whole message is centered around hope, because though life sucks, we can still have hope. Yeah. Because God is still there in the morning. He's still there at night. Every single time that we just have these issues of depression or whatever, he's helped me out 100% every single time. And that's what people miss, is that, when you're talking about other podcasts where it's like, oh, the Christian industry sucks. It sucks. And that's something that I was talking about in a previous interview that I just did recently, is something that I believe in wholeheartedly is community. So minus what these other bands, bigger bands that might be doing, and I'm not saying all of them do this that are bigger, but there are a few that would definitely put themselves on a pedestal, and they've been mean to other bands that are smaller than them, that they know that are smaller than them. In reality, Reclaim the Day isn't that big, but I'm surprised it's gotten to be as successful as it is in just the short time it's been together. I'm not. I still want to build up the smaller artists. So I'm all about, building the community, bringing in, I've talked to radio stations, brought them in communication with people in Indiana, get them affiliated with A1M and KCF. I've gotten definitely some smaller bands, centered around even from all the way to Georgia to bring out, because I really just I believe in being the light out there, instead of being that one band that's not like, oh, you know what, you're a lot worse than we are, we're just gonna leave you stranded. I want to lift people up instead of tear people down, and I wholeheartedly, that's one of my biggest things, is part of in Patreon I have a series called Leaving a Legacy. And something that's constantly on my mind is, what is a part of my legacy that I want to leave? And part of it is just the community, building that. For one, I want my son to know Christ. I want him to know who Jesus is. Two, I just want people to see the light and the hope that RTD has given, not just people at our level, but beyond that. People that were bigger than us, or people that are smaller than us, just all to come together in one unity through Jesus Christ, rather than let's compete, let's see who we can step on to get to where we need to be, because that is just so divisive, and that is not biblical at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Here's the thing. So I've been doing some variation of this. Oh gosh. I mean, probably we're getting close to, I've been at least 15 years, which basically means since middle school, high school. At first it was so it's kind of a fun story because my little short story is that this started as something called the Christian Music Source. May have heard of it, may not have. That's okay. Most people didn't. A few cool people did, and they were the fun ones that like to follow music. But I've always loved Christian music, and that's just because at first, all I ever listened to was Christian music, and that took a long time to break out of that. It's okay to not listen to Christian music all the time, by the way. But, I started listening to Christian music. I'm like, oh, I love this. And I wanted to talk about it. So my little homeschool group newspaper, when I was, in little middle school, I put out a column, talk about the new Christian albums were out. Now, I didn't really know a lot at that time, so my best bet was I grabbed the Christian music catalog and looked at the new releases and put it in there, and that's what I did. But eventually I got onto Facebook and actually started something with it and started to connect with people, started actually promoting specific artists and things like that. And it grew. I got to build those relationships and get to know some people. And I started to find, and my passion was connecting with people like you. And artists like you, and bringing other artists in and say, do you know this person? Because they do something like you, but they're over here in, Oklahoma, but and I love that. You're doing the vision I've had for so long, and I love to see that happening. I have never really gotten to get to the point where I got to really do this, and I get to do interviews and things like that. And that's what I get to do with this podcast. That's what this podcast is. It's about showing off the amazing ministry. Not necessarily the people. The people are amazing, and there are amazing people behind this. But I want to show the great work that God is doing through you, because let's point in the right direction here, right? Let's point to what really is important through these conversations. But I want to help promote the ministry, right? We're promoting good music because I am about music, and I want to show off some great music. But I want to promote the ministry, and I want to highlight the fact that you're doing something great. And so we're going to continue to do that. I'm so just glad to hear that that's going on, because for so long, and what pulled me back into this was those stories of just all these just bad stories and things going on, and dissension and all these things in the industry and things being torn apart. And I didn't see a lot of that coming together, and now it's starting to come back together again. And I want to help be a part of that. And so that's what this is. So I'm thankful you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
And so let's kind of, we've been having a great conversation. I know you've got so many pans in the fire and also a family. So whatever that might look like, but you've got so much going on, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. But
totally fine. My son's asleep, so you're good.
Oh, let's just keep going. 2 more hours? No. I don't think anybody wants to listen to me for 2 more hours. So I apologize for having to hear me talk so much as it is. Anyways, but I do want to stop, and what I always want to bring it around back to is this: I want to also highlight that we want to hear about what you guys got going on, and I want to support and push forward what you have happening. But there's another side to that. I want to bring into the side that we have listeners and an audience that love music too, because they're listening to this podcast. Well, they need to know how to best support you. And I think right now that at your Patreon, I mean, I tell you what, I think Patreon has really shifted the game for artists. Yes, I mean, absolutely. It's become one of the most successful ways to keep an artist going. So I'll just stop and say it, let's go follow Reclaim the Day's Patreon. Go be a member of that. If you don't have a lot of money, that's okay. I'm sure there's, you probably have something that starts like $1 or something just to hear something,
We do.
A lot of artists
$1 yeah.
do that, right? If that's all you can do, go do that, because I don't care what kind of money you make. We can all throw $1 in. Right. But go do the Patreon, support that Patreon. What else can we be doing to help you, whether it's monetarily, support wise? How can we be helping you and what you're doing, Reclaim the Day, and what they're doing? Obviously, we could be watching for some solo stuff, but how can we help?
Yeah. Well, for starters, absolutely. Patreon funding is honestly one of the best ways. As we've talked about, the musician's salary is just not,
existent.
a lot. It's not existent. So in all honesty, like a lot of the stuff that we're able to do is, either out of our own pocket or, sure. Which is, it's not that deep. But or just honestly, a lot of it's just provided by fans, and that's why we just love giving back to you guys. And but if you can't do that, prayer is the next best thing. Just being obedient, praying for us everywhere we can, and just to go out and minister and just to grow. That's the main key thing. You can go listen to our music. It's out on every streaming platform. You got a YouTube channel. You can support us on. We actually have a TikTok now, as much as I hate to say that.
Oh boy, it's infecting everything.
Yeah. We got a website, everything, get some merch. Whatever, you feel led to do, whatever it is helps us in that, even if it's just prayer. It means the world to us just having the support that we do. I'm honestly every single day, I'm surprised at the support that we have. I've been to shows that are in close, that are in Indiana, which is where we're from. And we headline these shows, and I'm just like, whoa, all these people are here to see us. Who's heard of us? Who are these people? I get so surprised. It's I never would have guessed that some of the stuff that has happened, the ministry opportunities that we've been given, and so much more that we've just been blessed with. And a lot of it is just, it's a huge thing. It's all been by God, but also the support of our fans, which we are just humbly just so thankful for.
Yeah. So I'll wrap it up by this. I mentioned it with Dee last week, but it really is. It is the thing that you guys are missionaries. Most people don't realize this, but your favorite Christian band, most of them, the real ones, the ones you're going to hear here at least, are really end up being missionaries. They're just as much as a missionary as the missionary that your church supports in Uganda or wherever that be, because there's mission fields here and you guys are doing the same missionary work that they are. Because you pointed out, it's because being in ministry is not being a pastor on a stage. That's a facet of what could be a ministry. Mm. There's something called the fivefold ministry if you want to get into the Bible, but we'll not get into too much detail. But this is a part of that. You guys are missionaries, right? And so we can support people like Becca or Dee or whoever that might be the same way you support a missionary, because they're just doing the same work, just in a different way. Support them, right? This is important. We're not sitting here just begging for money. We're not the give me your tithe money thing. This is just saying, you want to go out and reach somebody and touch somebody's life? This is how you do it. Support people that are doing that. Maybe you yourself don't have that, I am not great at going out and having standing on a stage and talking about it. So I'm going to support somebody that can, and just do that, man. This is important stuff. So, Becca, what's something good we can be listening to from Reclaim today right now? What is something that somebody should be out there listening to?
Are you talking about a specific song?
Oh yeah, what's the new stuff? What do we need to be checking out right now?
Well, right now, check out the new "Say Goodbye" video that was released a couple months back. That's about the newest thing right now. We will probably have some new stuff coming soon-ish. I wouldn't say within the next couple months, but in the future we've been working on some stuff, and honestly, some of it is definitely heavier. And so we're really excited about that. We've already got 4 out of, I don't know how many songs we're going to put on this full-length album, but we've already got a few of them pretty much written, and just kind of deciding how we're going to, we got quite a few more to go, and we're trying to, so kind of figure that out. Sorry, I just totally gotta, there we go. So just trying to, kind of do what we can, and take it for what it is, because I would tell you how many tracks are on this album, but I still don't. It's so early.
Oh gosh, leave some things to surprise now. Come on now.
Yeah, it's more like it's a surprise to us. So, but something I do want to say is that I heard this in a sermon, and I just can't get out of my head. So every single time when I talk to our fans, I want to mention it. But it's, you kind of hit it on the head there. It's like, it's not even just giving financially. There's so many different callings. It's not just like, oh, if you're a pastor, or, oh, if you go out and play music somewhere. It's like, in your own home or in your own, whatever you're doing. Like you could literally be living out your calling right then and there, because somebody who I can't minister to might be somebody that you can minister to yourself. And so it's just kind of like, just never doubt your worth. That's because none of us are above anybody just because of our callings or our importance. We're literally all the same, and we're all working towards that one goal. So, but yeah, absolutely. Say Goodbye is the number one thing that we've got going on right now. And if you haven't checked out the Choco video, go
yes,
see that. But
if you're going to see two massive screamers going at it, that's a great video for that. Like, oh my gosh, fantastic. Well, thank you for tuning in. Where can we find Reclaim the Day on the internet?
Everywhere on any streaming platform. You can find us. Basically, the best one is on our website, about to say something else. reclaimthedayofficial.com. But we are also on Facebook. Like I said, TikTok, Instagram. I don't know about Twitter yet, because we used to have one, but it's been a while. So may have accidentally deleted it. I don't know. But anywhere else, like streaming platforms, yeah, you can find us, and we're all over the place.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. I know it's been a great conversation, and this is definitely not going to be the last conversation. We're definitely going to have these conversations more often. So thank you for listening to episode number 2 of Where Were We Again? Theme music, as you're now starting to hear, is provided by D Swan. Song's called Haters. Go check that out on Spotify. Go check out Reclaim the Day on anywhere you can find it. YouTube, Spotify, you name it. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a great night.